in the past 4 or 5 years, I met a meditation teacher, and it's definitely become a big part of my life. And the meditation itself is crucial, is a tool. There's a lot to it, much more than I can say here. But it's really an orientation for life in general. And it doesn't matter if you're on a cushion or on a bike. It's that post-meditation practice of being here that we're all trying to do. I mean, I think everybody's searching for it, even if they don't know they are. So it's a huge part of my life. It really is my life, in a lot of ways.
Christopher Blevins is a mindfulness practitioner who builds community and a more inclusive and healthy world through bikes. He's one of the best professional mountain bikers America has ever produced, and he's one of the very best mountain bikers in the world. He's won the Cape Epic, and he's taken gold in the mountain bike world championships in the short track and cross-country mixed relay disciplines. He's also won numerous UCI World Cups in the short track and cross-country disciplines. Outside of bike racing, Christopher has a wide range of interests. He started his own production company, produces and performs music, and he's an active member in a Sangha, which is a Buddhist community. You can find Christopher on Instagram at Christopher Blevs. You can find that link in the show notes. Choose the Hard Way is the podcast about how hard things build stronger humans who have more fun. 2 years ago, I made a major upgrade to this show when I started working with Palm Tree Podco. They handle production, editing, and marketing for Choose the Hard Way, so I can focus on the part I enjoy the most, which is having conversations with incredible guests like Christopher Blevins, whose stories I want to share with you. This episode is brought to you by Palm Tree Podco. If you or your business is looking for a world-class podcast production partner to get you in the game or take you to the next level, then Palm Tree Podco should be your first port of call. You can find them at palmtreepodco.com and on social at palmtreepodco. Find those links in the show notes. And if you're a human and you sleep, and I know you are, I'd love for you to go to the Apple App Store and get the Better Lab app. I'm a co-founder of the Better Lab, and we help you mindfully build science-backed practices to sleep better that stick so they last over time. Research clearly shows that sleep is the ultimate amplifier of health, wellness, and performance. The science to get great sleep is straightforward too, but putting it into practice can be really hard. That's why we created the Better Lab to help you take simple steps every day to improve your sleep and be more present, aware, and conscious as you build one practice at a time, proven to help you sleep better and have fun while you do it. Right now, I'm working on getting hot water exposure for 10 minutes an hour before bedtime every day. It makes me feel incredibly relaxed, and by tracking my sleep quality, stress levels, and energy levels every day while I do it, I can see the positive impact that it's having every day. Get the Better Lab now in the Apple App Store and be more rested, happier, and more present for the moments that matter most to you in life. Learn more at thebetterlab.io. You can follow us at the Better Lab HQ, and you can always DM me to let me know what you think at HardwayPod. I know that you've done some work in the past with teaching kids in juvenile hall, creative writing, poetry. Can you talk a bit about how you got involved in that and what has it brought to you?
It was really just a couple quarters at Cal Poly. I was a sociology minor, and it made me have to take another couple years, couple quarters at Cal Poly. I probably could have finished a whole year earlier, but I was a business major, and the sociology was, probably what I preferred in some ways. But I had this professor who did a lot of work with incarcerated people, had a class that worked entirely in the prison, and I never took that class, but I was able to volunteer at the juvenile hall. Yeah, it was a creative writing program. They have ping pong, they have basketball, which I was bummed I never actually did, and a few other things. So creative writing was really kind of the way in, but what we did was just play cards most of the time. I had a couple of fun things. I got this big scrapbook that we could do blackout poetry with, and some of the kids got into it. A lot of them just, they just wanted someone to talk to, someone to connect with, and it was really more for me to kind of escape the Cal Poly bubble, super privileged existence I had there, and then meet these kids who were just kids and, are in this juvenile hall, some of them in kind of a more serious security situation. The creative writing, I wanted to be able to give kids a way to, discover themselves through writing. And maybe we did that a little more through playing cards when they beat me through their games and we're excited about it. But yeah, I mean, it was just a cool way to meet, these kids from different backgrounds and understand their worlds a bit. And I think they benefited from having college kids who were just a few years older, just sitting across from them, like listening to them, paying attention. And, maybe they didn't have much of that in their life. It's hard because you'd go in and meet some kids and start to know them a little bit. And then a month later they'd be gone. And sometimes they'd come back, but you never wanted to see them again in there. Yeah. Hope I can do that again in the future. Because it was just a short period of time at Cal Poly, but it was fun.
One of the things that I do is I'm an advisor to an organization called A Second You Foundation, and I've had its founder, Hector Guadalupe, on this podcast. And for anybody listening who hasn't listened to that episode, it's one of my favorites. Hector's an amazing guy, and so is his organization. And Hector did 10 years in federal penitentiary for drug trafficking. And while he was inside, he got really into health and wellness. And A Second You Foundation helps people coming home start their own careers and businesses in health and wellness. And now he's expanded that into helping people coming home start careers in trades like electrical, plumbing, real estate. So I'm just curious, from your experience with what you did there, did that bring any new perspectives to you about your own life or about people who ended up in these situations where basically as children they're in jail?
Definitely makes you appreciate, support systems that I've had. And that also relates to like bike racing. I mean, I grew up in Durango with Olympians as my neighbors and had an amazing youth development team and program. And just to talk about that a little bit, like I think a lot about youth development in the context of biking. And it's not just how you can be the fastest, but how the bike can help you, navigate the world and learn about yourself. There's tons of examples of friends I have who grew up in the same program during Odivo, and then are now coaching or, bike packing trip leaders or videographers on the bike. So it's just another tool to take you where, to some viable, good life. And for a lot of kids in Durango, that's what it is. So I guess realizing that support systems, culture, community creates, the conditions for someone like me to really fall into the bike and take it all the way up to the Olympics or wherever. Like I'm really passionate about, because it's the world I'm in, trying to create that for other kids. So I work with this nonprofit Silver Stallion on the Navajo Nation, and the Navajo reservation is the biggest in the U.S. And it's beautiful. They've got a lot of mountain bike trails and people who've been riding for years and shred. And Silver Stallion's kind of at the forefront of trying to build a cycling ecosystem, through and by Dene people. And yeah, it's just an example of like, if these kids can have good mentors and, see where the bike can take them, then they're going to go as far as they want to with it. So that work, and yeah, in a way that working at the juvenile hall just made me realize that a lot of this is simple. It's like giving kids the support network and ecosystem of like, this extends to everything. It's like functional, practical, health and wellness support, but then also mentorship and kind of the emotional support. So it is, yeah, I just, I realize how lucky I am to have had that. And if I can help others, particularly through the bike, I'll be happy.
And with those two examples you just gave, both of Silver Stallions and of juvenile hall, and I guess of your experience as a young person, and I was lucky to have similar experiences where for me, whether it was like punk rock, hardcore, bikes, skateboarding, when you're a kid, if you have a thing that catalyzes a group of people around you to like go do the thing and it's a positive thing, it can be a pretty amazing experience. So bringing that to more people is awesome. And that thing being the bike in particular, I think is really amazing. And at the same time, this is something I've thought about a lot. We were actually talking about it on a group ride here last week, and a group ride where I live is like typically like 3 to 5 people. That would be a big group ride. But our local high school does have a high school mountain bike program. A lot of kids do it. And we never have kids out road riding. Like I never see any in the area. None of them ever come out and do the group ride. And I was asking some of the other people on the ride, like what was up with that? And they're like, well, bikes cost a lot of money. They can't get a second bike.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a big issue in the sport of cycling. And like, I love NICA, and I've been out in the Bay Area in particular where I see a group of NICA riders. I'm like, whoa, they've all got like $15,000 bikes. This is wild, you know? So, I mean, it is, it's an interesting situation, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on that specifically. Like, how can we bring more young people into a really incredible, awesome sport that builds community, connects you to the environment, connects you to your body, your mind, and it's just really expensive, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think like, you know, I don't want to be naive to the reality that like bikes are expensive. And if you're trying to create like, if you're trying to race, and it's like, if you're a race car driver, like it's always going to be expensive, and the highest end bikes are always going to be expensive. And that will be just this natural barrier, which I don't really know how you can fix that at that level. Of course, giving kids who are talented bikes for free and the support and coaching, like that goes a long way, but you're kind of always running against the reality that bikes are expensive. At the nicest S-Works level. But there are so many different ways you can ride a bike, and where the bike can be a tool. Anything from an organization like World Bicycle Relief, who gives, you know, durable bikes to people in rural Africa, and they've been doing that for years. And bikes can be a mode of transportation that can change someone's life. Then it can also be, you know, it's ecotourism industry that makes a town like Moab or Downeyville, for instance, like brings a lot of jobs and just overall community there. So I think realizing that when you talk about a life on 2 wheels through the bike, like it can look a lot different than just a kid trying to make the Olympic team. You know, there's a lot more to it, and there should be conversations and, you know, ideas around all of it. But then also realizing the bike is just a tool, and it's a darn good one. You know, there's a lot of research about the social and, you know, physical benefits of riding your bike. Outride does a lot of that. My sister was the research manager at Outride for a couple of years, and did a lot of that research. But again, it is just a tool, and it hopefully, it has to adapt to somewhere like, you know, middle of Los Angeles versus the Navajo Nation. But I do believe in it. I've seen its efficacy, not just only for myself, but through communities. And I think people just have to be creative of thinking of ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Los Angeles actually, I think, is a great example of how a cycling community, I mean, LA, of course, has had an incredible competitive road cycling, mountain bike racing community forever. And in the early 2000s, as fixed gear riding became more popular, there were organizations that I was lucky to be around, like the Bicycle Kitchen, which had an Earn a Bike program. Hundreds and hundreds of kids came through that program. There were things like Midnight Ridas and eventually the Wolfpack Hustle. I don't know if you're familiar with that group, but that, you know, they had a lot of checkpoint races. And I think a lot of kids who got into the sport that way by probably riding a bike they earned or a relatively affordable fixed gear bike over the years, like, those are some of the people who became criterium racers or doing some of the pretty incredible things that are happening in LA, which has a really thriving cycling culture. And then thanks to YouTube and social media, I think those types of rides have spread all over the world now, which has been really beautiful to see. But I am curious. I was thinking about this specifically as it relates to you. So you're born in 1998, correct?
Yep.
And Norba racing really peaked like early to mid 90s. Ned Overend, Durango resident, first UCI cross country world champion. And then you were the first UCI short track world champion. And now American mountain biking is back in this situation very recently of Americans are at like the very, very top of the sport. Of course, we had Kate Courtney's world championship, but it seems like, you, Haley Batten, this cluster of American riders are now, like at the top of the sport again. So Americans are like back at the top of the sport that really started here in America, which is interesting to see. Do you think that it's just this generation and cohort of riders that you're a part of, or do you think this trend is going to continue? Will this be a long-term trend?
Yeah, I sure hope it's a long-term trend. I mean,
I do too.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, I think all the building blocks are there. There needs to be more to make it sustainable, but you've got this base of ridership with NICA. You've got tons of kids riding racing bikes in high school. And you have people you can point to who are competing at an international stage, taking it to the Europeans, and I think it is still a very European dominated sport. We only have one World Cup in the US. It's expensive. It's really difficult to get over there. You have to be on the right team. And there's a lot of steps in the development pathline from NICA to competing at World Cups. And I think that those steps could be a little bit closer together and stable. There needs to be just more teams, more races, so that a kid racing in NICA who's super talented can say, "Oh, I can do this," and I see how. But it has to continue, and I think in a lot of ways, because there are those kids that are super fast, and you see it every year on both the men and women's side. And I'm just really excited about the future, and I care a lot about bringing it back to the U.S. in some ways, not just geographically, but making the mountain bike racing kind of part of the mountain bike riding culture in the US, because there's tons of people who ride mountain bikes, but racing is this kind of different thing that people don't think about. And I think that gap can become a little bit less drastic. So yeah, I've got tons of, time for the conversation of that, but I'm excited to see where it goes. And I'm the only US male in the elite World Cups this year. There's maybe one or two others at some of them, but in general, I'm the only one racing. And I hope that changes. I hope that, there's obviously some really talented U23s that'll come up to elites, and then hopefully more will follow in their steps.
Where do you think the talent is going? Is it going into gravel, or if it's a rider of your ability? Because it seems based on your performance and what we've seen from you, like you very well could be like another Durango native Sepp Kuss. Like you could probably be making several $1 million a year as, a climber for a world tour team and probably winning stages at the tour is what I would guess you have the capacity to do if you'd wanted to continue on the road. So do you think riders who have your level of ability are generally choosing to take that path or go into gravel? And that's why we don't see more Americans at the World Cup?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything. There's a lot of really talented riders who just go to college and stop racing, because they don't see the viability of it. They don't have the team support, and they can't financially have it make sense. And there isn't that like robust of a collegiate cycling, system throughout the US. There are a few schools that are really good, but they're smaller schools, in small towns like Durango. And if it was like running, if it was NCAA sanctioned, like maybe you'd see kids just naturally continue with it. So yeah, for sure, there's like that cliff that a lot of kids just stop racing. And they could go further if they had the support. And then the road is a little bit more predictable. The teams, there's a structure to it. It is in Europe 100%. There's no domestic road racing where you can have a career anymore, really. But someone like Sepp, Quinn Simmons from Durango, were really talented. Sepp, has his own unique background, going to school and kind of finding the road later. But when you do find it and you are in those teams, you kind of have predictable salary and structure around it. So that makes sense for a lot of kids. And the gravel is interesting. It's obviously new. It's becoming bigger. There's a lot of ways now to be a pro in the US racing your bike. And the biggest one is by doing lifetime and stuff like that. But I don't really see that as a way yet for the NICA kid to just jump to immediately. It's more for the mid-20s pro who doesn't have the support at a World Cup and is kind of finding it in the US and competing and being successful. So I just want to see there be more opportunities to be a bike racer, period, and I think we need those, and then kids will naturally go towards the style of racing they like.
When it comes to the actual style of racing that is XCO mountain bike, is there anything in the developmental path here domestically in the United States that actually prepares people for that style of racing? Because it just seems quite different than what you might find domestically at a mountain bike race. Of course, in terms of the level of competition, but also the courses themselves. Like, they're purpose-built courses. They in the United States, it's historically really been oriented around ski resorts and high altitude mountain biking. And it's not like that on the World Cup level, right?
For sure. I mean, you can't go from NICA to a World Cup course. You don't want kids to do that. So there needs to be that middle. Yeah. And a lot of these kids are like sending it, but racing on a course is totally different than how good you are just descending when you're fresh, like the Europeans, the Swiss kids are at these Swiss Cups on skills courses that are like around the venue, at age 7. It's crazy. So we just need more races with good courses, and that's hard because you need the people to race them. And a lot of that is the amateurs who can make it, affordable for the promoters. And a lot of the amateurs want to do races like Leadville or Unbound that are kind of experience, this ride you would never do otherwise, not go race in some park somewhere. So that's a challenge, but it is important for there to be that step up from NICA. It's one step removed from the World Cup. The US Cups have done that well. And in Fayetteville especially is a great course that is more technical. But there's more work to be done, and I think more people to step up and kind of fill those roles and provide those races. But yeah, right now, I mean, you got to go to Europe to race and get that shock to your system, and be like, oh my God, this is not NICA.
What types of efforts does it actually require to do a World Cup XCO? Like, we see it on TV, but when you look at your power file after a race, what are the duration of experts? And if you were to put it in like a 5-zone model, where are you during the race?
You're basically, so your threshold's 400 watts.
Yours might be.
Yeah. So mine's roughly there. The normalized power is about 400 watts for an hour and a half.
Whoa.
Yeah. And you spend like 20, 25 minutes above 480, whatever. So really intense, above like 500. So when you're on the pedals, you're basically full VO2 sprint. And then you recover down a 15-second descent that's super technical and have to go again. So it is really on off. You don't spend that much time, even though the normalized is threshold, you don't spend barely any time riding at threshold. You're either way above it or coasting down the descent.
I heard you talk on the Pink Bike podcast about how you have a stiff straight leg descending style, which I hadn't thought about this before, but is the idea similar to rock climbing? By locking out, you're not using any muscular strength while you're going down the hill so you can recover?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good comparison actually. Yeah, it doesn't like look that dynamic or fast, but try to be as like loose and relaxed as possible on these rock garden descents. And yeah, I've found that the best descenders are the ones who recover the best.
And that recovery aspect is not something people think about much, particularly in training, that the recovery part of your interval and training for that might actually be as important as the effort that you're doing. Is that something that you're consciously training when you're out preparing for competition?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of the efforts are, 30 15s or minute on, minute off. So you kind of just have that in there. And obviously the better your aerobic system is, the quicker you'll recover. So you do a lot of zone 2 rides to build that, as just the same as roadies would. But yeah, it's your ability to generate lactate and then clear it as quickly as you can.
I know that you had a skull fracture when you were young that made you deaf in your left ear. How has that impacted your development as a rider and as a musician?
Yeah, I typically use both sides of the headphones, but I don't have it in right now. But I think because it travels through my skull to my right ear, the sound. But I was lucky. Yeah, I fractured my skull in a BMX race when I was 10, and it easily could have. I'm not really sure how this would have happened, but I know that it's your inner ear, so it could have impacted my balance, and that would have been an issue, obviously, with racing your bike. But I adjusted really quickly, and it's pretty normal to me. I don't have any issues. The only time I really notice it is when I'm on the right of people on the road bike or something, and it's windy, and I just have to swap sides with them. So in races on the road, I'd struggle if I was on the right side of the peloton. Maybe I had a radio in my ear. I couldn't hear anything else, So yeah, but when you're 10, something like that happens. It was harder on my parents, but for me, it was like, oh, when can I ride again?
What was the actual wreck? What happened?
It was a BMX race. Kids crash all the time in BMX, and I just happened to, I was wearing a full face helmet, but smacked my head on top of a lip,
Ooh.
just quite hard.
Yeah. You can't just rub dirt on that one and have it magically get fixed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're in an Olympic year. Do you feel more pressure right now in this moment? Not from this interview, but from...
Yeah. No, I mean, you're a lot maybe more focused in an Olympic year, and kind of simplifies things for you. The pressure is really like you just have this opportunity that you may never get in your life again. At the best, it's every 4 years. So for sure, everybody, and it's really cool, we're all like giving all of our attention to July 29th, July 28th, whatever it is. So yeah, not pressure, but opportunity, which sometimes can feel the same.
And, you have this video series that's out right now, and there was something in the voiceover that jumped out at me. You said, we're supposed to do hard things to see how we can grow from the challenge. What hard things have you run into in this Olympic year as you're moving towards trying to be at your best for the Olympics? Like, what's been challenging for you?
I mean, every day, of training is a hard thing, obviously. Like today, I've got some pretty gnarly intervals, and I know I'll go to that place where I will have to work through it and kind of answer the call. But then the sacrifice of being away from home for 5 months and committing fully to it has its difficulty. So accepting that, committing to it the best I can is really the name of the game. And first you have to accept like all parts of it, that I'm going to be in Europe racing, won't see my girlfriend for 3 months or whatever. And I'm going to be, training as hard as I can. And there's going to be ups and downs, and that's just part of it. So yeah, you got to accept it because there's no way out of it. And then, the commitment part is here I am going to give it my all,
And when you're on the road traveling that much, I've started this sleep company, the Better Lab, and we help people develop mindful science-based based practices to sleep better and then to maintain them over time. There's a lot of research around something known as the first night effect, which is when you spend the first night in a new location, your brain has a heightened degree of vigilance, and it just biologically makes it more difficult for you to sleep. For somebody like you who's in new locations all the time and you have to perform at your absolute highest level, how are you overcoming that to be as rested as possible so you can perform?
Yeah, well, practice. And I travel, yeah, do it a lot. I travel with my pillow. It's just a little hack, so you got the same pillow that you have at home. And then, yeah, I think it's making home wherever you are. So like wherever this European hotel room is, and that's where the mindfulness comes in. Like if you can just sit and just ground yourself there, it's going to make things a little more comfortable. It's really that approach, and giving myself enough time to deal with jet lag and deal with adjusting, and realizing that we're not really biologically meant to fly across the world, and all of a sudden be somewhere new every week. Like that's a new thing for humans. So there are going to be some challenges and different emotions or whatever as you're just dealing with jet lag. So I've kind of learned to accept that part too.
Yeah, and mindfulness, of course, it's conscious awareness that can lead to insight and presence. And for you, is that something that's always been part of who you are as a person, or have you done anything to proactively cultivate mindfulness?
Yeah, well, looking back, like I've kind of always had the inclination, looking at some of my lyrics when I was like in high school, it was all about trying to, it was all about mindfulness. In the past 4 or 5 years, I met a meditation teacher, and it's definitely become a big part of my life. And the meditation itself is crucial, is a tool. There's a lot to it, much more than I can say here, but it's really an orientation for life in general. And it doesn't matter if you're on a cushion or on a bike. It's that post meditation practice of being here that we're all trying to do. I mean, I think everybody's searching for it, even if they don't know they are. So yeah, it's a huge part of my life. It really is my life, in a lot of ways. And different conceptual understandings of it are important, in learning about it and reading and studying meditation and Buddhist views. But the core of it is the experience you get on the bike sometimes, where you just stop thinking and you're just, like we talked about earlier, in that flow state, and trying to continue that throughout everything. Obviously it's a challenge. It's the challenge, but I think it's an important one to go on.
For you, is mindfulness, does it involve like a formal sitting or walking meditation practice that you do daily?
Yeah. I do I probably sit for 20 minutes a day, sometimes more. I really, this off season, want to do a longer retreat, and I've done a number of retreats at this place in California. So yeah, I think it's really important to have some consistency with it, and there's different aspects to it, right? I mean, the grounding, box breathing, really settling, and then obviously different kinds of meditation, the baseline of just shamatha or vipassana. But sometimes, like before a race, it's, how can I get myself locked in and ready to embrace whatever comes, whether it's like the best day possible or hitting a pole in the start loop like I did last race. Like you gotta let yourself be pliable in a way to whatever comes externally. So yeah, that's been a huge part of my preparation for bike racing and for life.
I want to come back to hitting the pole in a second. For you, are you also part? I mean, you mentioned you've gone to some retreats. Are you also, and you're on the road a lot, but when you're at home or when you're abroad, do you ever join any, are you part of a Sangha or any kind of mindfulness community anywhere?
Yeah. My teacher, is in some ways he's like a sports psychologist. Would call him that for people who maybe wouldn't otherwise understand what kind of a meditation teacher is. But yeah, it's this small community in Cayucas and in Tibetan Buddhist, really the heart of it, really the core of what Buddhism is, which isn't, a cultural religious thing, but it's a orientation towards reality. And obviously you're well aware and a practitioner yourself. But yeah, the more practical applications of mindfulness, what we call sports performance, can be a part of it, but the real heart of it extends beyond that.
I'm not that deeply familiar with the Tibetan tradition. I practice in the Plum Village tradition, Thich Nhat Hanh. So that's what my Sangha is oriented around. And I finally found a Sangha where I live, the True Heart Sangha, which is absolutely amazing. I was looking for one for a long time during the pandemic, and then reached out to a bunch of people. Eventually, this one happens to me like less than a mile from my house. I rode my bike there last Sunday, right? which was awesome. Something that's been really surprising to me is the practice of Dharma sharing that happens at the end of our Sangha every week, where we sit silently and people can share about their practice or what's going on in their life. And you just listen, with conscious awareness. And it's really, I didn't really know anything about Dharma sharing before going to Sangha. And it's kind of blown me away how impactful for me it has been just to be there and be present and to listen deeply. I don't know. Is that a part of your tradition?
Yeah. I mean, no, that's it, right? The making something that's kind of formalized around it. It's funny just how a little bit of that goes such a long way, right? Like creating the environment for you to just be there with other people and listen to them without preconceived idea of it. It's so helpful to just have that. And I want more of that, community and intentional work, practice, so to speak. But yeah, there's aspects of that with what I'm doing with meditation and the little Sangha there. But I definitely love Thich Nhat Hanh, and I've read a lot of his books and would love to visit sometime.
If you're ever in the Mid-Coast, you should pull up at our Sangha. It's interesting. As I've gone to Sangha, I've been doing this podcast now for 6 years, and I've been interviewing people as a journalist in other capacities for more than 25 years at this point. Something I realized in the past few months is that I believe that my podcast is actually Dharma sharing. And what I'm here to do is to listen to amazing guests like you and like to hear your stories that hopefully benefit everyone who's listening. I'd never really thought about it that way before. And now it's kind of all snapped into focus for me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm sure you've had experiences where you just realize like the Dharma is about your life here now, right? Wherever you are. And like, I have to remind myself about that with this European cycling world. Like, this is it. This is where you share what the Dharma is, which is nothing but the truth of, who we are, right? And living in that. So I love the aspect of that. And obviously so much of our world is very scattered and we don't get time to just chat with people. So in an intentional way. Yeah, it's cool about a podcast for sure.
To go back to hitting the pole during that race. So that's a great example, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, no mud, no lotus. Mm-hmm. So you hit a pole, your objective is to win the race. You've run into a pole. Now what? Where does your mind go in that moment?
Yeah, I kind of like chuckled. I was like, well, here I am in the World Cup leaders jersey, like on top of the world, ready to give it my all. And I know, I knew that there was nothing's guaranteed, right? Like just because I had won the weekend before, the form is there, the fitness is there, but anything can happen. So I wasn't surprised really, but I did kind of laugh to myself. I was like, of course this happens now. It's a really quick adjustment, probably a quicker one than it took me to adjust my bars. But then it was just same approach too. It's just like a different, way to go about it. Like I had to pass a ton of people and adjust the result, or like the expectation of a result. But yeah, it was the same process, just step by step, corner by corner, climb by climb, and try to put together the best race I could. And that's what's cool about that kind of insider orientation is whatever the external situation, the insider orientation doesn't really change.
When you have a race weekend, at what point do you start to become nervous or feeling anxiety?
A couple days before, you just feel in a way like the blinders go on, you're focused, and the race nerves are going to be a part of it as long as I'm a racer. And to any, young rider, like I tell them that, like, you're never not going to be nervous, and that's a good thing. But your relationship to the nerves will probably change, and hopefully you'll see them as like you'll welcome them in a way. They're a good thing. But yeah, really depends how I'm feeling and everything. But a couple days before, I start to get a little bit more refined energy wise, I guess, towards the goal.
Does it become much more intense as you get closer to the race, or at this point, can you just keep it at a kind of modulated level?
Yeah, I mean, I think a pretty relaxed person. At the same time, like I can have a lot of intensity to it all, but be relaxed at the same time. So again, the downtime that we have, we spend so much time, sometimes 5 hours before the race day, where you're just there, sitting there, with your legs up. And it's hard to not let yourself be distracted or leap to something else, scroll on your phone or whatever, and just kind of sit with the nerves. And that's a challenge. Like I definitely fall into that sometimes, but there's a lot of uniqueness to each race, and depends on really how I'm feeling and how I kind of respond to it. But in general, it's kind of a balance of being relaxed and intense.
How do you process a race? What are like the 20 minutes immediately following a race like for you? And is it the same if you've won or if you run into a pole, or does it vary?
It's a really like obvious, feedback of what happened, what your result is. So for sure, like the whole inner process, it's important, but the reality is we're there to win, and you're going to be disappointed if you didn't have a good race result wise. But so it takes a little while to like balance those two and let yourself realize that if it was a bad result, but you gave it everything, you can still be proud of it. Sometimes that takes weeks, right? But in the immediate aftermath, you can't really trust your mind when you're just exhausted in a lot of ways. Trust your thoughts, because they're not going to be fully rational sometimes. But I do like the feeling of contentment when you're, at the end of a race and you did everything you could.
How did it feel when you won the short track world championship relative to other victories that you've had?
Yeah, any of those really big ones didn't feel fully, real. It took a while to process. And at the same time though, like you crossed the finish line, you won, you got this fancy jersey with stripes on it, but nothing's really changed, right? You still got to go back and eat dinner and go to sleep that night and probably train the next day or race the next day. So, and the same thing goes when it's a bad race. Like nothing really changed. Your projection of how you did or other people's projections are always going to be changing, but the result, whether it's a good one or a bad one, doesn't really change how you are right after it.
Part of mindfulness, of course, is just to try to be here now and not to time travel into the past or project into the future. Yet I would love for you to do that right now. So when you look ahead, whether it's as a musician, someone with a production company, as a professional cyclist, what are the achievements that you really, really deeply care about and would like to make happen in your life?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to win some more bike races. If I can get a medal at the Olympics, that's obviously career defining, and just continue. I'm at a point 26 now where I'm entering like the peak of my career and be going as fast as I'll ever go. So I want to see what that is and be the best I can be. And I know that if I am doing that, then I can win any race I line up for. But the overall, endeavor is to share the gift of the sport that I've been so lucky to be in for 20 years, and just connect with people, go ride with kids, like make it super fun and ground level. But then also just think of ways to bring it at a more systemic level. And the bike is just a tool I have at my disposal. So like when I was talking about the nonprofit and the Navajo Nation, work like that, there's so much you can do through the bike to connect with people. And I know I'll continue to do that once I'm retired, but I also don't know, what I'll be doing. I don't want to know, and I don't know when I'm going to retire. Right now, it's just this year that I'm thinking about.
You've mentioned your meditation teacher, and it sounds like that person is an important mentor that's played a big role in the trajectory of who you are and where you're going. Who are other people who played a big role in shaping who you are or really opened your eyes to unlock who you fully are?
Yeah. So my teacher, Patrick Sweeney, and I met him 2019. And he's just, amazing with how much he gives to my journey of trying to be the best I can be, whether it's a racer, but, really just as a human. And there's just an undivided, sense of care and interest in that endeavor from him. But there's tons of coaches I've had since I was 5 years old, from, BMX coach Jason Rogers, who was probably a 20-year-old at the time, would like throw cones at me on the corners to simulate like people dive bombing you. And was just this, great, fun coach to be around. And Durango Devo with Chad Cheney. Chad is, been talked about when people ask about Durango and Sepp and others. And Chad is really like always tethered to the love of riding your bike. Like he doesn't really care about intervals or numbers, but he cares about that new trail that someone just built, that secret trail that he built. And he's always going to kind of steer kids towards the love of riding your bike. So that was huge for me as a kid. And then my dad has been my right-hand man since I was 5 years old, and trains and races like a pro himself, and has been just endlessly involved in my career and the success of it. And my mom as well, my sister, who used to race and is now in med school, crushing it. So I've had tons of support, and I could talk about that for another hour, but for sure it's just a amazing network of people.
Do you feel like winning an Olympic gold medal would be the ultimate apex for a cross-country mountain biker?
Yeah. I mean, it is the result. We don't have a Tour de France. The Olympics is the Olympics. So
what do you think about the course? How does it suit you?
I think it's a really good course for me. I haven't ridden it yet, but I will in a month or so. And I've heard it's a really good one for me.
Will you win an Olympic gold medal?
We shall see, shall we? I mean, I definitely know I can. So obviously there's 1,000 ways it can go. There are probably 10 people who can win an Olympic medal, and only 3 of them, only 1 gold. So when you've got the likes of Nino and Tom Pidcock and others to go against, it's a hard battle to win, but I'll definitely, I'll be there for it.
What do you think of Pidcock and Vanderpool? I mean, and you mentioned Sagan. I am really curious to see what happens if he ends up, I don't know if he still has the possibility of getting an Olympic slot, but what is it like having these Galacticos in the mix?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tom's one of the most talented bike racers ever, and he's just a damn good racer. He just knows how to win. So he's always hard to beat in whatever discipline. Nino is the GOAT. He's the Michael Jordan of our sport. I look up to him so much. Vanderpool. What more can you say? So it's really interesting, the cross-discipline riders, and I've been like that myself. And even though I've chosen not to do too much World Tour racing, definitely I think people are realizing, like, if you're a good bike racer, it doesn't matter what kind of bike you're on. And there's only 2 people like Tom and Vanderpool who are who they are, and it's really cool to be in the sport at the same time as them. But we all work as hard as we can, and we all have a chance to win. Well,
whatever happens at the Olympics, I wish you presence to the experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's really it, right? You only get that moment once.
Awesome. Well, Christopher, thanks for being here, and thanks for this awesome conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Great to chat, and hope to visit the Plum Village Sangha at some point.
Choose the Hard Way is brought to you by Palm Tree Podco. If you're ready to start a podcast or you want to take your existing podcast to the next level, the team at Palm Tree Podco are your ace in the hole. They're the team behind some of the best podcasts on the planet, and they're ready to help you make your podcast all that it can be. Find them today at palmtreepodco.com and on social at Palm Tree Podco. You can find those links in the show notes. I helped start the Better Lab because I found that there are many people out there like me who know a lot about sleep and track their sleep and recovery, but still struggle to do the things that actually improve their sleep. Research clearly shows that sleep is the ultimate amplifier of health, wellness, and performance. The science to get great sleep is relatively straightforward, but putting it into practice can be really hard. We created the Better Lab to help you take simple steps every day to improve your sleep and be more present, aware, and conscious as you build one practice at a time, proven to help you sleep better and have fun while you do it. Get the Better Lab app now in the Apple App Store and be more rested, happier, and more present for the moments that matter most to you in life. Learn more at thebetterlab.io, and you can always DM me at HardwayPod to let me know what you think. Choose the Hard Way is a Big Truck production. Anthony Palmer at Palm Tree Podco is the producer and editor, and Emily Miles is head of digital and marketing. Hecla Projects founder Jeffrey Nebellini is the world-renowned designer behind our striking brand identity and the iconic Choose the Hard Way logo. The content for this show is created by me, Andrew Vance.